Hello, today we're in Ross-on-Wye. It's a small town in Herefordshire in the west of England. As its name suggests, it sits on a bend of the River Wye. It has a population of around 11,000. It's less than 20 kilometres from Monmouth in Wales and slightly further from Hereford, which was in Wales during the Middle Ages. Locals just call it Ross, but since the early 20th century it's been officially Ross-on-Wye to distinguish it from other places called Ross, including a region of the Scottish Highlands. In Welsh, Ross is called Rossan Awi. Ross, or Rossan, means a headland, referring to the town's position on a rise in the land overlooking the river and the west. Ross has a lot of historic buildings, some of which date back to the 16th century. The earliest reference to the town is in an official document of 1016, although there was a Roman road station nearby called Ariconium. The town received its market charter in 1138 under King Stephen, though it's likely there was a market there already. It's said that King Edmund II Ironside died at Ross in 1016. It's said also that he was attacked and mortally wounded while on the toilet. When Edmund's mortal enemy Canute heard of this underhand attack, he had the assassin hanged from an oak tree. The trouble with this story is it doesn't appear until centuries later, and may be entirely made up. At the heart of the town, at the top of the hill and at the junction of several streets, is the market house. This was built in the 1650s and has been used variously as a council chamber, a school, a law court, a dance hall and a public library. These days it's the home of Made in Ross, a group of artists and craftspeople displaying and selling their products. There is a good selection of small independent shops, and unlike many towns, the high street is busy and thriving. It's also a popular base for walkers and hikers. This is High Street, on the way towards the Riverside Walk. Prospect Gardens was created by the man of Ross, John Curle, in the 17th century. During 2008, excavations here revealed Roman remains, including what may be the foundations of a stone lookout tower. John Curle was born in 1637 and died in 1724. His family had a long association with Ross-on-Wye, and John worked hard to improve the town. He planted trees, created prospect gardens, campaigned for better education for the townsfolk, and mediated in legal disputes. Alexander Pope wrote a poem about him, and he is commemorated with a local pub, the Man of Ross. Curle's house is still standing, a Tudor house opposite the Market Hall. In the 18th century, Ross was a stop on the Wye Tour, an early example of organised tourism. This was a middle-class version of the Grand Tour, in which wealthy young men used to travel around Europe, or as Blackadder put it, wandering around Italy in a big shirt. The Thomas Blake Memorial Gardens were opened in 1907 to commemorate Blake, who had bought Prospect Gardens so as to keep them in public use. Blake Gardens leads along the river. By the riverside path you can see a sculpture by Valenti Pitel called Swans. Pitel's work is also at Malvern, where he created his Diamond Jubilee bird sculpture. The Polish-born sculptor, who is now in his 80s, lives in Herefordshire. This is New Street. This was previously a pub called the Horse and Jockey. This was previously the courtyard at the Swan Hotel. If they don't have a server called Tammy, I shall complain. This sculpture is the Phoenix by Robin Brown. It's outside the Phoenix Theatre, and this is the Phoenix Theatre. The city walls are not as old as they look. They were built in the 19th century, including the gazebo tower, which was originally intended as a viewing point. A clue that they might be a modern imitation is that they separate the former bishop's palace from the town. This would not have been a good idea, at least from the bishop's perspective. The tower is now in private hands, but is occasionally open to the public. The Church of St Mary the Virgin was built of local red sandstone in 1280. The tower was built in the 14th century, and the internal arcades were created in 1743. In the church you will find several monuments to local families, many of which are marked with the symbol of the hedgehog. This small and snuffly insect-eating animal is a symbol of Ross-on-Wye. The connection goes back about 1500 years, when Celtic tribes settled in the area and called it Egin, meaning land of the hedgehog. This comes in turn from the Roman Ariconium, which has the same meaning. The Latin ericius also gives us the French word hérisson and the English word urchin. The present-day Corn Exchange is a live music venue. The Corn Exchange we see here is a market hall built in 1862. This is Station Street, but no sign of a station unless it was where those new buildings are now. From 1855, Ross had a railway connection to Hereford and Gloucester via the Hereford, Ross and Gloucester Railway. Like many small railways in the region, it was taken over a few years later by the Great Western. In 1873, the GWR opened a line from Ross to Monmouth. This closed to passenger trains in 1959, and the Hereford line followed in 1964. Most of Ross's railway history has been removed, the tracks have gone, but some buildings remain, such as the goods shed and the engine shed. The station area is now an industrial estate and a large supermarket. There is more evidence of the old line around Tintern in Chepstow.